Hey everyone, my name is Marina Marmolejo and I'm the entrepreneur in residence, so EIR, for the New Haven Free Public Library. Today, I have a really good friend, Alikiah, joining me in a really casual conversation about what it means to be an entrepreneur and what does it mean to like fail often, fail forward, and how do you navigate that in a constructive, productive way. So Alikiah, you want to like throw together an intro and introduce yourselves, and then we can kind of go back and forth about the topic at hand.
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name's Alikiah. I'm currently coming to you from Port St. Lucie, Florida, which is about halfway between Orlando and Miami. I left my work computer.
Warm there.
It's super warm. It's like 70 degrees. So it's like
it's cold here.
Cold for Florida, but I can't complain in front of you all. Speaking of fails, I left my work computer in Miami yesterday. And so I am about three hours away from that. So I'm coming to you from my mom's iPad. And yeah, I'm excited to talk with Marina. Yeah, it's always good to have a conversation with a friend, and hopefully we can say some things that will be useful to other folks. I am working on a venture right now called ReRent, which helps people monetize their unused or underutilized apartment space. And in the past, I've also worked on an ed tech that was helping kids learn faster. I'm using individualized kind of education, and a fintech ed tech that was helping people navigate their student debt after grad school and undergrad, and that firm is called Summer. So yeah.
If you want, you can feel free to put any of your links in the chat.
Okay. Let's
can convert that. Oh, on the iPad too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. We can put it in the chat before the end. I'll make sure to put your information in the chat.
Yeah,
so
no worries.
Funny. That's so funny. Well, okay, so Alikiah, when do you feel like was the first time you really leaned into the identity and the label as an entrepreneur? When was that like? What did you feel like you claimed that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been in this community like a little bit before it was cool, like while it was on the rise. So I didn't think of like, I feel like leaning into the entrepreneur, whatever, has like more attached to it now than it did, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever. I would say that my first like entrepreneurial thing was like hustling candy in middle school. That was like where everything started. You know, and I even wrote like an application essay for HBS around that, but they didn't find it as amusing. So, oh well. But
what kind of candy?
All the candies.
Okay.
But Twix was the bestseller, which is still why it's one of my favorites today. And you know, like we can still run through the economics. You go down to Walmart, you buy a 10-pack. Now they've kind of started to skimp, so you only get an 8-pack. But you used to be able to get a 10-pack for $1, which is 10 cents of candy, and you can flip those in middle school for $0.25 easy. And so, you know, you're marking that thing up by
you gotta go right after Halloween and right after Valentine's Day too.
Oh, for those sales? Yeah, but you know, you can do it all year long. Anytime there's a student in a seat who would rather be listening to a teacher while on a little bit of a sugar high, which is pretty much all the time, probably more so now. Yeah, I could see a COVID bust because of, you know, Zoom is probably even worse. So yeah, but that was the first deal.
That's so it's been a minute, right? Like you kind of claimed this identity for a while, which is so dope because I think for me, I had all these barriers of imposter syndrome. So I very recently have kind of self-proclaimed this entrepreneurial label. So it's cool to kind of perspective.
At the very least, she's EIR, so she does have officially entrepreneur in her name.
Title. Yeah. And I feel like I have so much imposter syndrome when it comes to like the like label that exists. Like if I was like, oh, Marina's an EIR. Like, could I be an EIR? And it like no, probably like those are people. I don't know. That's like someone else. But yeah, when it comes to hustling candy, then I'm like, yeah, that's all there. Because I mean, I think you go rep by rep, right? Like I did that And then I think the next like hustle was creating the high school yearbook. Like I went to a specialty high school where we do like our associate's degree while we were finishing up high school, which is only really useful if you stay in state, which I did it. So, you know, but my little sister did. And so she got the accelerated path. But to stay focused, like we didn't have a yearbook because they're like, oh, you're getting this specialized program. So like, we're not going to give you sports, which I think is illegal. And then two, we're not gonna, you know, like high schools lose money on yearbooks. So that's not gonna be a thing. And I was like, a little bit like, maybe I'll be a graphic designer at the time. So I done that initially in 9th and 10th grade, like done a little graphics. And then I like started this associates in business. And then I was like, well, I'm going to combine those things and make this yearbook and like make it happen. And I don't know, they could have gone, it worked out, but was like the next rep of like, okay, now you need to collect money for like a pre-order so that you can fund this thing that otherwise you can't get done. And
yeah. It sounds like you've always been an entrepreneur, which is really good. This is the kind of people we want to be talking to right now.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, Alikiah, like what was the first time you felt like you failed with ReRent, and walk us through that story. Maybe talk about like what feelings overcame your body, talk about how that impacted relationships, right? Like what, just kind of walk us through that.
So, I mean, I feel like that's tough. I feel like the first failure with ReRent, I don't know. I don't think so. I'll say that, right? Like ReRent is somewhat travel facing, and to give folks backgrounds, like typically we work with students, and like you can see that students, there's a huge student debt crisis, which was what I was working on before. And then I thought like, okay, like we can help people navigate after, but what would be great is if they took on less student debt in the first place. And so, you know what students have? They have apartments that they rent out for the whole year. And you know what students don't do? They don't live there for the whole year. So the one thing that students have, they're like grossly underutilizing. And so we're talking about a bleed of several $1,000s a year. And it actually, if you look into the data, because people get a lot of scholarships and all that like goes directly to tuition, housing actually drives more student debt than tuition does, which is like a wild thing. But you know, like when how it works is that we rent out apartments on behalf of students through channels like Airbnb or VRBO, and we have cleaners on contract, kind of like those things on an Uber model. So if you're leaving your apartment, the whole goal is that like it's super easy to book an Airbnb, but for it to be just as easy to share your place on Airbnb, where that like happens with the click of a button, so that people actually do it, as opposed to when I like walk into any room and say like, who stayed at an Airbnb, and everyone raises their hand, and then I said, who's hosted on Airbnb, and no one raises their hand. And like if you think about it, everyone that like has stayed at an Airbnb like left behind space that they could have had someone stay at while they're gone. So like that shouldn't be the case, but it is.
Great idea, and it sounds like you've had success with it. I have a question with the failure thing. Have you ever had an unhappy customer?
So that's what I was going to get to though. Like,
okay.
I've fallen down in front of customers, yes. And this actually happened. So I was like looking through. Marina sent me some notes about like, oh, we might talk about these things on Sunday. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I like walked through like what I might say. And then you know, but failure is just like ever present. So then it would turn out that Monday would happen, and I would like absolutely fall down on the job. And it was like this thing. So right now we are in the process of building our technical platform. So almost like everyone on my team is a developer. And then like we do some operations right now. So with the pandemic, we kind of shifted focus to working on the platform pretty much as most of what we do. And then we'll reopen going into the summer. So there are times where like a pandemic hits and you're like questioning your whole life and like, okay, like
that happens all the time, right?
All the time, yeah. You're like, what should I be doing? Should I be working? Like there are people dying of COVID, like maybe I should work on that somehow, right? Like there's just a lot going on there. And like, okay, like when is travel gonna come back? Like, will we have a vaccine? Probably not for several years. Like, I don't know, the whole deal. So there's times where you like question everything about your life, and it's like just an existential crisis that doesn't have to do with the failure. But then on Monday, it's like sometimes you just fall down on the job in front of like a customer or an employee or whatever, and it's like the same thing. And so Monday happened, and all of a sudden I was like, oh well, now I have a way more recent failure to talk about. Where
oh God, the buildup. I'm nervous.
You're nervous, right? So we're only running like a couple apartments, because we're only running apartments where it's like a new model that we're testing.
What area is this in, just so people know?
This is in New Haven.
This is just in New Haven. Okay.
Yeah, this is in New Haven. And so we're getting prepped to expand into Providence and Boston in the summer.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, but also terrifying, because it means that we will serve more people, and like we're dealing with people's houses. So like, it's not like I'm dealing with like, I don't know, someone's like picture they're trying to upload solely, and like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Like if I mess up and
the stakes are high.
The stakes are high, right?
Yeah.
Like if I can you imagine if like, I don't know, people are giving us their keys to their home, like all their stuff is in there, like. And so what happened yesterday, because I was like, I could talk about hypothetical ways like I messed up, or I could just continue telling you about my actual failure yesterday, which was that we had someone coming back, and somehow like it slipped my mind that, and we're running this on like 2 parallel systems right now, because we have like the new system that we're getting up and running that's automated, and then we have the old system, which is just like me trying not to drop the ball, and I dropped the ball. So I forgot to let our cleaner know, like the cleaner that was supposed to handle this property, like to clean on the flip side of like a guest that was coming last weekend. And then our client got home yesterday and was like, did you guys have a cleaner here? Because it doesn't look like there's been a cleaner here. Oh. And there was like photos that were like, just, they weren't like terrible, like, but like nothing, the whole point of ReRent, and like this is like the real beauty of it, is that like you leave, you come back, and like in fact your apartment is cleaner, right? Because like it's been cleaned several times. So it's like, and you like, yes, someone used your apartment, but it feels like your apartment just like happened to be cleaner at the
like
end
a
of it.
hotel
like,
room. Yeah.
Right. It's like it's as if you leave and then you came back and your apartment was serviced, right? But then it just turns out that you also like made some money on the way. But instead it was like, oh, and she's like, and my family's here. And so we embarrassed her in front of her family. It was just like terrible. And I'm still like, so then it was like, all right, like first I just had that feeling of like, oh my gosh, like how can I even resolve this? Right. Like how could this have happened in the first place? Like maybe I should never do this again. Like maybe like I've lost my mojo. Like I'm out of like, maybe, I'm like trying to raise money and I can't even like deal with this like one apartment. Like what's going on, right? And so I was like embarrassed and sad, and because like I feel like we didn't deliver on a customer promise. Like she trusted us with her apartment. We like had her returns, and it was so simple, right? Like if I had sent like a text message like a week ago, it would have been resolved, and like that was all I had to do, was like literally send one text message, and it would like none of this would have happened. But I did it, and now like I'm sitting here, and this like poor like student has their family like visiting, and like their family's like, what's going on in your apartment? And it's like COVID, like, you know, because it's not actually dangerous, right? Because there's like a good buffer period, so there's not actually any danger. But like the perception of like cleanliness, right? Like the whole thing, right? You can just
people are very much on it now.
Yeah. And so then I'm like calling our head cleaner, Patricia. Shout out to Patricia, because like without her, my life would already be over, and like there would not be a business at this point. But I'm like, Patricia, and it's like 4 p.m. yesterday. Can you clean an apartment like today for today? And she has no heads up, right? Like we're not doing a whole lot of like stuff right now, so it's not like she has like ReRent time like allocated out like she normally would, right? Normal volumes. And she's like, today? And then she's like, well, tomorrow I can. And I was like, actually, the person just arrived at home, which is all my fault, right? So like, this is like my mistake becoming someone else's like burden. And Patricia is like nice enough to like do an after hours, like 7 p.m. to like 8:30 cleaning, right? Leaving her family to go do that. And like, it's like partially resolved because like now she has a clean apartment, but she wasn't supposed to like have to like come home to a not clean apartment. And so like I don't even it was an experiment, so we gave her like $500 up front, and we only ran the apartment a couple of times. Like it was more for the we were doing it within a building, which was like a new, so we didn't even make money on it. So I don't even have like, well, I'll give you more of the proceeds or something, right? But I still don't know that still has to be rectified. That's still like outstanding because we didn't meet the
requirements. Yeah. Well, at least you recognize that. It sounds like you went through it a lot yesterday.
it was, I mean, so much so that I've left my computer in Miami, and now I'm like, so it's been a good 24 hours for this conversation to happen. So,
yeah. And I love this, not that I love this story, but I think it's so important to name the emotion of like embarrassment and feeling like, I just kind of want to quit for a second because this is just really overwhelming. And I'm curious, like, where do you get your support, or where do you get the perspective to reframe the situation instead of
Did you call your mom is what we're asking. Did you immediately call your mom and cry?
So well, I should have immediately called the customer, but I was actually too chicken to do that, so I emailed back and forth, which is, that's not good, but that's for another time. So generally I think, well, so I got on the phone. I did call Patricia. So I called Patricia and we went back and forth. And then what happened next? I was still pretty distraught. Oh, I had a meeting that was like my whole team plus like another customer had been invited to, that I just canceled. And this was like 10 minutes before that meeting was supposed to happen. So that was also embarrassing, but a necessary decision. And then, and then I just sort of sat there and like walk through why it happened, how I had failed, why it was so easy for it to have not happened, right? And it's like a ball drop, and like what it means. I prayed a bit, because there's not, like, one of the things as a solo founder specifically is there's not always someone to go to, right? Like you can go to your team, but like you also let your team down. Like in this case, because this was my responsibility, and like had I put this on responsibility on them, then they would have been, part of it. But like, no, this was just like me, my text message to send, I didn't send it, right? And so now, like, I don't know, that's for them too.
I think it's good that you prayed, because a lot of people feel really alone when that happens, because there's not someone they can go to. So I think that's good that you have that.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that point too, because it's like, where's the line between transparency with your team and shielding them from what's just your own problems, right? Your own personal things you're gonna have to go through. And I'm still figuring out the line of like, okay, for example, we applied to this grant, we didn't get it. I tell my team, and what else, what else is there to do really, except be kind of sad about it. So it's like, where is that level of transparency? When you are a solo founder and it's very top, information goes from you to the team, and like, how are you that buffer? Negative news.
And this one I shared with the team this morning on our call, like, hey, this, because I think some people were CC'd, some people weren't. So I shared with the wider team, like, hey, this is what happened. Like, this was still unresolved. It's
how to make it not happen again. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I told them their job is to automate me out of this process, so I'm not the single point of failure.
Just don't trust me.
I said, that's why you're here, is to make sure that I don't have to send this text message so that I can't forget to.
But do you find it helpful when these things happen? Do you learn from them? Do you feel like it makes your team stronger?
I mean, it's like failure is kind of like this thing where it's like losing a game, right? Like, no one wants to lose the game. Like, you always learn more when you lose, but no one wants to lose. It still sucks. Especially like a big game, or like an insignificant game that you totally should have won in this case, but you just didn't show up, so you lost it. I think that you can learn. Sometimes there's more lessons to be taught than others. Like, it's, it depends.
I think what you're talking to like resonates with me in terms of like mindset, and like you're expecting the failures to come. You don't know when they're gonna come, but it's inevitable. And it's like, how do you allow yourself some wiggle room to be like, man, it's okay to make mistakes, even though this mistake shouldn't have happened and I'm mad at myself for it happening. It's inevitable and it's kind of bound to happen. So I think that's something interesting.
You're gonna shoot an air ball, but you gotta keep shooting. It's fun.
The important point is that your whole company doesn't crumble. Your whole idea doesn't crumble. You don't crumble when something like this happens. You just kind of, you kicked into gear. It sounded like you worked on it, and it's good. It's good to know, like, entrepreneurs like that are running companies, that are founders, that like it affects them. They're not just like, oh, that was just another customer, it was a mistake, let's move on. Like, it clearly affected you, and you cared about the moment, and I think that that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it affects you too, in the sense, like, it affects your relationships. Like, when I get bad news via email, like, my roommates can tell that something's wrong, right? It's not this very, like, singular experience. Like, the energy kind of oozes out, and so it's, when you care so much and so deeply, and it's your child out and about in the world, and when something either happens to it or you fail it, it hurts, like, deeply hurts.
It's tied to your identity in a way that's like never true otherwise, right? Like, whenever you work for someone else, like, at some point, even when I was working for Summer, right, and I was like chief product officer, so like I'm responsible for all of the things essentially, right? But like, the CEO is the one that's not sleeping, because even though I like really want this thing to succeed, like, his name is attached to it, and like, it's like his whole
the work-life balance isn't the same.
There's no work-life balance, because you're ultimately responsible, and also in the way that you will never be if you work for someone, right? Like, who is there? If I was in New Haven right now and Patricia like couldn't attend to that, like, I'm at that apartment cleaning that apartment, right? Like, that's just that's like the life of a founder, and it's like always gonna be your and it's hard, because especially if you're a solo founder, you don't always have some things are things that you share with the team, but other things are like, we could run out of money in 2 months if I don't get this fundraising done. But like, you know, like, and the thing is, it's also high stakes in that, like, it affects you, but some mistakes are fatal and will kill your company, or will make it much harder for your company to succeed. Like, rarely, like, really, usually the thing that is most fragile is like your will to continue. Like, if you can still have a will to continue, there's like, usually a way. But it's not like you can't make mistakes that like the whole point is that your company is young enough and fragile enough to either change the world or to like easily disappear into nothing. Like,
or to pivot, like you were saying, like your company like pivoted with COVID and stuff. And it sounds like that's like a big one too, is sort of like taking these moments of like, okay, we can't do it this way, something went wrong, this is like a catastrophe, and then pivoting your idea, and sort of like, I admire that a lot in the entrepreneurs that we see in these programs.
And the other piece there too is, you know, like, when you get to that moment of like, because it's your pride is tied into it, and not even in a bad way. Like, you've been working on this for, in my case, like a couple of years, right? So if I turn around and but like COVID is like, that's like a 100-year flood, right? Like, if it turns out that there's no, like, it's time to move on, it might just be time to move on. And that's like a tough pill to swallow, but that could have been what the situation was. And it's, whenever you lose, it's really hard to like leave behind an identity. Like, it's one thing to like leave a job. It's another thing to like leave an identity. And even when I stopped being a consultant, right? Like, it was hard to like leave an identity.
What about when you stopped selling candy?
You know, it was hard to leave. No, I'm kidding.
I still sell candy, actually.
I just bought more candy, but then didn't, like, kept it all, and like that was how I coped. No, I don't even remember what actually. I think I went to high school and was like, I can't do this anymore.
That was funny.
I appreciate that so much, because I don't know what it's like to leave that entrepreneurial identity, right? Like, Dream Kit's my first venture, and so having you speak to that point, I think, is so important. And you're like breeding advice to folks who are trying to weigh the pros and cons of having all these failures and thinking, do I the will to continue? Do I keep going, or is it time to pivot? Is it to leave this? Love it, give it a little kiss, and thank it for the experience it's given you, and use the skill somewhere else. And it's like, that's obviously it's by case basis, but I appreciate you bringing in, like, there is an option to pivot that is outside of your business, right? Like, moving
like starting something new. Like, it sounds like every entrepreneur over and over and over has millions of ideas. Like, that's based in your DNA, is having all these ideas. And so it's like learning what to put your weight towards and then maybe moving on from one to another. That's a great point. I think a lot of entrepreneurs can like understand.
And would you, Alikiah, give any advice to folks who feel so weighted down by like this accumulation of failure after failure after failure and don't really know if they should push through and have this will to continue, if they should, seek out other resources, whether those are like podcasts or books that you've found to help you kind of break through this maybe like depressive state or exhaustive state or sad state? Just like curious about resources that can help reframe the failures.
I mean, I do think that people help. I do think that, and for a solo founder, you're gonna bleed onto your partner. Like if like your wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, right? Like it's gonna be hard for, like, you're on a roller coaster ride, and like you can try and not keep them on a roller coaster ride, but it's like, so the problem is it's so personal to you that if you shut them off from that, like it's gonna be hard for you guys to like have something intimate, right? Like, so you need, like, my little sister, she's been there since the beginning, and it's good to have these people that are like, because they need to know enough about the business for it to not be like, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't tell a friend about like a relationship that, like, you wouldn't tell a new friend about an update in like a long-standing relationship because like they have no background, right? So it's like not a useful conversation. So you need people that like that know all the things, like, and continue to know all the things that like aren't in any way tied to your business or to your whatever you're doing. Because the problem is that everyone else is like somewhat tied to like the success of your business, and you need to be able to talk to people that aren't tied to like the business's success or failure, but are just tied to like wanting to see you do the thing that's right for you,
like a mentor or someone in your corner, like your sister.
But the thing is, like, you can, so if I had a mentor that was like a mentor outside of ReRent, then I can talk to that person. If I have an advisor that I like brought on to advise ReRent, well, then they're excited about ReRent. So if I go to them and say like, I messed up yesterday, I think, or like, there's a pandemic, I don't know, like, what do you think I should do?
Yeah, right? They can't have a stake in it, like you're saying.
Right, they already have a stake in it, and it either advises them, like, or either they're gonna like be like, oh, well, like, should I put further stake in this thing, right? Because like, really, as an entrepreneur, like, all you're trying to do is get other people to invest in you, right? Like, invest their time, if they're employees or like volunteers, or if they're funders or advisors, they're investing time or money, right? Like it's probably one of those two things, or like, I don't know, connections or something like that. But like so you're trying to build that up, and I do think there's a way to do that while being vulnerable, but it's more finesse than I have. Don't
do that. Yes, you do.
No, because I think really, like, you're building long-term relationships, and so to the extent that you can have conversations with everybody, great, but there will be some things that are more like just daily up and downs that you do need people that you can kind of talk to that aren't attached.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I'll add on to as we wrap up is the power of people is so important. And if you are listening to this either now or later and feel like you don't have folks in your corner who could be that support system, the library is so connected that if you just reach out, they'll know someone either like through their first circle or second circle that can help you think through some of these conversations. Like the library is this brain trust of New Haven, and then they've interfaced with like hundreds upon thousands of people. So Alikiah, we couldn't have planned this more perfectly, right? Like your answer is now a opportunity to highlight all like the incredible resources of the library. So
people can just think back and be like, this happened to this successful person and he didn't back down and it didn't ruin his company and he's good, and like people get through this. So I think it's great to have you share these stories.
And it's about reps, right? Like I think at the end of the day, most successful entrepreneurs, it's like not their first venture, and like I'm not like trying to do dream kit or something, but like you have even
it's rare to succeed on your first try.
It is, and even if you do, like, there's gonna be learning and growing, and that's what these failures are. Like when I'm at my best, I'm reframing the failures as learning and growing, and like opportunity, right? Because like Stripe, right, is an amazing business that came from like a struggle to be able to do something. Like there's so many businesses that come out of a struggle that you had in founding a business. Like, so what you're trying to see is that like through your struggles can breed opportunity. And even if that's an opportunity for your own personal development or growth or like learning. And it's not like it's easy to stay there. Like failure is like not really real unless like it very much just feels like losing when it happens. But it's like, can you successfully move from one to the other? When I'm at my worst, I'm just stuck, like being sad.
Like getting back on the horse. Exactly.
Yeah. And so if you can have other people around you to pick you back up and help you be more resilient, so that you're getting back on the horse faster and able to continue, so that you're not slowing your momentum too much. And especially a network of folks where it's not even that they might have the answer, but they might know someone that might, like Marina was saying with the library. Like that's kind of
we love when people need help. That's what we're here for. The EIR, we've got office hours that Marina does for any business questions, and that's why we're doing programs like this. We're trying to get the word out and help people when they're down and out. And so I thank you for doing this. This was really interesting.
Alikiah, you're a light. You're a light of wisdom, and this was learning for me. I appreciate you. I miss you. Thank you.
Tell your mom she has a good iPad. Everything's working. It's good HD. It's good.
Very good.
So,
awesome.
If anyone wants to, I don't know, Alikiah, if it's okay with you, if anyone wants to reach out to Alikiah, if you want to maybe mention your email or website, check out.
Yeah. So I think I dropped in the chat the app.
And for folks watching the video, if you just want to say it out loud, maybe they can.
Yeah, I will. So you can reach me at Alikiah .barclay@yale.edu is going to be the easiest way. Or you can just Google Alikiah and my LinkedIn will come up because,
You can also put it on the comments of the video in Facebook.
Yeah. So
it'll live there. But also, we did get 2 questions. I don't know if anyone saw them in the Facebook, but we got 2 webinar questions. One was, because of the president's inauguration being at the same time tomorrow, will these be recorded? And they are. They're going to be on our Facebook video catalog and our YouTube. So you can continue doing this throughout the week. Every day at 12, we're going to be featuring new people, talking like we did with Alikiah, and those will live there. And we were told that you were a good person to start with, and they had a good time.
Awesome. Well, that makes me happy to not add this to the list of failures. But yeah.
That was good.
Bye everyone. I hope that I get to talk to you guys soon. Yeah.
Definitely. You're welcome back anytime. Tell us any more failures or successes you want to tell us about.
Okay. Well, we'll set that. We'll set that up.
Definitely.
Bye guys.
Bye. I appreciate you.
Bye. See you all tomorrow, everyone else.